Hello everyone, we're here today on the public test server for Star Wars The Old Republic, and I'm going to be showing off these Jedi Knight Sentinel changes today that are the proposed changes for the upcoming 7.0 expansion. The Jedi Knight is actually the class that has been on the public test server for testing the longest. It was the first one put up. However, the first time it went up, we didn't have any visuals. We had the class that we could go play. We couldn't make any choices, but we had a big text list. However, since then, the Jedi Knight is fully testable and has an actual UI that you can look at. This is very much a work in progress. It's more so players can see it while they're testing the best that they can. And I'm going to be going through this entire tree for Watchmen, Combat, and concentration. And if you want to see the Jedi Knight Guardian, that will be up in a separate video. So if you want to give your feedback for these, you can go to the SWTOR.com forums. Make sure if you're giving feedback based on just this video to say you didn't actually test it in-game, but you instead saw the changes online. I do highly encourage you to go to SWTOR.com and download the public test server. If you need more information about how to go about doing that, I've got links in the description of this video for everything that you need to know. So with that said, let's hop into this new trees. So the way this works is that for the abilities that are just part of the Jedi Sentinel, they show up on the ability list here on the right. The only things that show up on this tree are things that are either specific to the discipline, so Watchmen, Combat, or Concentration, and things that you make a choice about. So I'm going to start by going through Watchmen. So at level 10, you'll automatically get Force Melt and Zen, much like you did before. But at level 15, you'll get to make a choice of one thing that will change the way Force Melt works. So your first option at level 15 is Critical Melt. And this one has a note that says In Dev, which is short for In Development. And it says Force Melt increases the critical hit chance of all periodic damage you deal on the affected target. The note says it's not yet functional on the test server, so you'll just have to imagine it when testing. The second option is Juyo Melt. Force Melt immediately maxes out your Juyo stacks and deals 3% more damage for each stack you have. The last option is Melting Center. Activating Force Melt immediately builds 10 centering, and Force Melt deals 4 times its damage whenever it consumes a stack of Zen. At level 20, you'll get another choice. The first option is Snaring Slash. Slash and Blade Rush slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds. The second option is Debilitating Slashes. Blade Barrage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And the last option is Transcendence, and this is an actual ability that you would click and activate versus a passive. And this is only good for groups. So applies Transcendence to you and your group members within 40 meters, increasing movement speed by 80%, melee and ranged defense by 10%, and purges movement impairing effects, last 10 seconds. So if you want Transcendence, which you would have had before, you have to choose it at level 20. At level 25, you'll pick up the Cauterize ability, which is something you had before, but at level 30, you'll get to pick an ability that somehow affects Cauterize. The first is Force Lash, and it's an actual ability that you would click versus a passive. Lashes out at a target with the power of the Force, dealing damage. Deals additional damage for each of your periodic burn effects on the target. Replaces Cauterize. The second option is Flaming Wave. Dealing damage with Cauterize sends a wave out from your primary target, causing your burns to tick on nearby targets. And lastly, Cauterizing Focus. Cauterizing applies trauma and refunds focus when used while Zen is active. At level 35, you'll get another choice. The first option is Force Clarity. It's a clickable ability. Consumes all ability charges of Force Clarity and applies Force Clarity stacks to you. Each stack increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with these attacks. Recharges 1 ability charges every 30 seconds. The second option is Burning Center. Critically hitting with periodic burn damage builds 2 centering even during Zen. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. The next option is Burning Zen. All melee damage attacks deal additional burn damage while Zen is active. This effect cannot occur more than once per second. So there's your new options. At level 40, you'd pick up Merciless Slash, much like you did before, and at level 50, you get some new choices. So your level 50 options, first option is Adamant. You generate 4 focus when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. Additionally, the cooldown of Resolute is reduced by 30 seconds. Second option is Defensive Roll. Reduces damage taken from area effects by 30% and increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. And your last option is Intercessor. Force Sleep gets an additional charge and builds 2 centering when activated. At 55, you'll pick up Overload Saber, much like you did before. And at level 60, you'll get another choice. So your first option for 60 is Jedi Adjudicator. Each use of Strike and Zealous Strike reduces the active cooldown of Rebuke by 3 seconds. While Rebuke is active, it generates 1 focus whenever you are attacked. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. The second option is Trailblazer. Cyclone Slash deals 15% more damage. And unlike the Jedi Knight Guardian, it looks like you still have Cyclone Slash just automatically rather than a choice. And the last option is Zealous Ward. Activating Saber Ward grants immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds. And getting attacked while Saber Ward is active heals you for 3% of your maximum health. At level 70 is where the choice gets quite hard. All of the classes have a difficult level 70 choice that they have to make. So the first option is Guarded by the Force. Reduces the damage you take by 99% for 6 seconds. So just a straight up shield. The second is Force Camouflage. Obscures yourself with the Force, becoming difficult to detect, reducing your threat toward all enemies, reducing all damage taken by 50%, granting immunity to controlling effects, and increasing your movement speed by 50%. Lasts 6 seconds, dealing direct damage, ends the effect prematurely. So those are 2 defensive abilities that you basically have to pick between now. And the third option is Blade Blitz. Quickly rush forward 20 meters and increasing your defense chance by 100% can be used while immobilized and purges movement impairing effects. And that's very much a very strong mechanics utility focused option that is also defensive. So that's going to be a really, really rough choice at 70. And that choice is going to exist for combat and for concentration as well. It sits for all 3 there. And at level 80, the first option is Inspired Focus. Inspiration generates 12 focus when activated, and you heal for 1% of your maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes focus. The second option is Incisor. Force Sleep, Force Melt, Clashing Blast, and Zealous Sleep snare the target, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And the last option is going to be Stoic. Increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 centering when attacked. This centering building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. And that's what the Watchmen tree looks like, and the really hard choices at 70. Combat and concentration are not going to be that different, but we'll go through them, especially for the low-level ones will be very different. So, combat. At level 10, you'll automatically pick up Zen and Lance, just like you would have before, but at level 15, you'll get to pick an ability that changes the way Lance works. So, Puncture is the first option. Lance deals additional damage to enemies in a straight line behind the primary target, so you stab right through them. The second option is Zen Lance. Whenever Lance consumes a charge of Zen, its cooldown is reset. And the last 15 option is called Driving Lance. It has a tag that says In Dev, short for In Development beside it. It's not quite finished yet. Lance now leaps to the target and does additional damage scaled by your current movement speed. And the note from the developer says temporary base damage increase on Lance 15%. So, looks like it's not quite done yet. At level 20, you'll be able to pick up a new option from a set of 3. The first option is Snaring Slash. Slash and Blade Rush slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds. The second option is Debilitating Slashes. Blade Barrage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And the last option is Transcendence. Much like before, it's one of those clickable abilities. It gives you and your group members movement speed increased by 80%, melee and range defense by 10%, and purges movement impairing effects. So if you want Transcendence, you need to pick it up at level 20. So Blade Rush, you'd pick up at level 25, much like you would before. At level 30, you get to pick an ability that changes the way Blade Rush works. So the first option is Defensive Flourish. Each time you deal damage with Blade Rush, your damage reduction increases by 2%, stacks up to 3 times, and lasts for 6 seconds. The second option is Rush Down. Blade Rush deals more damage the faster you are moving. Well, that's fun. Valor Blade is the third option. Blade Rush's critical chance is increased by 20%. Activating Blade Rush reduces the cooldown of Valor's Call by 2 seconds. And you're going to see a lot of typos and stuff in here if you go and test this yourself. Don't worry about those. They just wanted to get this out as soon as possible for testing. They haven't done their final sweep for all the little stuff yet. At level 35, you'll have Force Clarity. Consumes all ability charges of Force Clarity and applies Force Clarity stacks to you. Each stack increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with these attacks, or charges 1 ability charge every 30 seconds. So that's a clickable ability. If you want Force Clarity, it's something you're going to have to pick up at 35 as part of a choice. So the second option is Swiftness. Critically hitting increases your movement speed by 5% and your crit chance by 5%. Lasts for 6 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. And the last option is Quickness. Critically hitting with force-based energy attacks reduces the cooldown of focus spending offensive abilities by 1 second. This effect can only occur once every second. So next up is going to be level 40, you get Precision, much like you did before. At level 50, you'll get another choice. So Adamant at level 50 is the first option. You generate 4 focus when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. Additionally, the cooldown of Resolute is reduced by 30 seconds. The second option is Defensive Roll. Reduces damage taken from area effects by 30% and increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. And the last option is Intercessor. Force Sleep gets an additional charge and builds 2 centering when activated. At 55, you'll pick up Clashing Blast, much like you did before. And at level 60, you'll have another choice. It's very similar to Watchmen. The whole top of the tree here is the same as Watchmen, the same as Concentration. So you've got Jedi Adjudicator is the first option at 60. Each use of Strike and Zealous Strike reduces the active cooldown of Rebuke by 3 seconds. While Rebuke is active, it generates 1 focus whenever you are attacked. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. Second is Trailblazer. Cyclone Slash does 15% more damage. And lastly, Zealous Ward. Activating Saber Ward grants immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds, and getting attacked while Saber Ward is active heals you for 3% of your maximum health. Level 70 is that hard choice again. So the exact same Watchmen combat concentration. First option is Guarded by the Force, straight up shield. Second option is Force Camouflage, the little baby stealth that reduces damage and makes you go faster. And the last option is Blade Blitz. So combat will also have to choose between 2 very strong defensives and a defensive that's also movement focused. At level 80, you'll be able to choose between 3 things as well. So the first option is Inspired Focused. Inspiration generates 12 focus when activated, and you heal for 1% of your maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes focus. Second is Incisor. Force Sleep, Force Melt, Flashing Blast, and Zealous Sleep snare the target, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And lastly, Stoic. Increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 centering when attacked. This centering building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. So there you go. There's combat. Now we're going to go check out concentration. Or, as the tooltip here says, concentration. It's okay. It's alright. It's in development. Big work in progress. At level 10, you'll pick up Focus Burst, and Zen, much like you would before. And at level 15, you'll be able to pick an ability that affects Focused Burst in some way. So the first option is Unstable Focus. Focused Burst unleashes a burst of energy around the primary target, dealing damage to nearby enemies. The second option is Focusing Strike. Focused Burst deals 15% more damage and applies trauma to targets. Trauma reduces the healing received by 20% for 0 seconds. And lastly, Zenith. Dealing damage with Focused Burst or Force Sweep increases your critical hit chance by 20% for 6 seconds. At level 20, you'll get another choice. So first up is Snaring Slash. Slash and Blade Rush slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds. Second option is Debilitating Slashes. Blade Barrage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And lastly, Transcendence. Just like the other two, if you want Transcendence, which makes your group faster and gives your group some defense, you need to pick it at level 20. At level 25, you pick up Zealous Leap, much like you did before. At level 30, you'll get to pick something that changes the way your Zealous Leap works. So your first option is Zealous Annihilation. Killing an enemy within 3 seconds of dealing damage with Zealous Leap resets the cooldown of Zealous Leap and increases its damage by 25% for 3 seconds. The second option is Zealous Defense. Activating Zealous Leap puts a mini ward on yourself, which absorbs damage, lasts up to 10 seconds. And lastly, Zealous Revelation. Activating Zealous Leap immediately builds 10 centering. At level 35, you'll get to make another choice. So at 35, your first option is Force Clarity, and this is a clickable ability. If you want Force Clarity, you have to choose it at level 30. Consumes all ability charges of Force Clarity and applies Force Clarity stacks to you. Each stack increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with these attacks. Recharges 1 ability charges every 30 seconds. Second option is Focused Meditation. Each time you deal damage with a force-based kinetic or energy attack, you generate 1 focus. And lastly, Criticality. Your critical hit chance is increased by 25% during Zen. At 40, you'll pick up Force Exhaustion, much like you did before. And at 50, you'll get another choice. So at level 50, you'll get Adamant. You generate 4 focus when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. Additionally, the cooldown of Resolute is reduced by 30 seconds. The second option is Defensive Roll. Reduces damage taken from area effects by 30% and increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. And your last option is Intercessor. Force Sleep gets an additional charge and builds 2 centering when activated. At 55, you'll pick up your Concentrated Slice, much like you did before. And at level 60, you'll have 3 options, the same as the other 2 specs here. The first option is Jedi Adjudicator. Each use of Strike and Zealous Strike reduces the active cooldown of Rebuke by 3 seconds. While Rebuke is active, it generates 1 focus whenever you are attacked. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. Second option is Trailblazer. Cyclone Slash deals 15% more damage. And Zealous Ward is your last option. Activating Saber Ward grants immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds, and getting attacked while Saber Ward is active heals you for 3% of your maximum health. At level 70 is that very hard choice for concentration, much like Combat and Watchmen, and that's the 2 defensives and your movement. So the first option is Guarded by the Force, Pure Shield for 6 seconds. Second option is Force Camouflage, that mini stealth, reduces all damage taken by 50%, immunity from controlling effects, and increased movement speed. And lastly, Blade Blitz, your movement ability that quickly rush forward 20 meters and increase your defense chance by 100% while blitzing. That's going to be the really hard choice for concentration players. Your 71's where you're going to be crying a little bit if you were playing before about having to pick between the 3 instead of having all 3 at once. At level 80, you'll have one last choice. So your first option is Inspired Focus. Inspiration generates 12 focus when activated, and you heal for 1% of your maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes focus. The second option is Incisor. Force Sleep, Force Melt, Clashing Blast, and Zealous Sleep snare the target, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And lastly, Stoic. Increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 centering when attacked. This centering building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. So that's our 3 trees: Watchmen, Combat, and Concentration. For all of you, I know that level 70 choice is going to stink. But if you want to give your feedback about, especially about the less key abilities, I feel like they're probably still looking for feedback about that. Definitely visit the SWTOR.com forums. I'll have all the links for everything you need in the description of this video, and feel free to test this out on the public test server yourself. If you guys enjoy these really in-depth videos about what's coming up in Star Wars The Old Republic, as well as guides from the live server, visit Swtorista.com/support to pledge towards the cause of figuring this stuff out. And if you want similar Star Wars The Old Republic videos to show up on your YouTube homepage, subscribe to this channel. See you guys later, and I'm looking forward to 7.0. Bye!